The Denver Broncos have plenty of options in Thursday's NFL draft. Will they trade up? Will they trade down? I think they should. Sayre thinks they shouldn't. We'll debate it on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into a brand new episode of Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day. Just a reminder, you can get Locked on Broncos for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts every single day, all year long. So do us a favor, subscribe or follow if you haven't done so you never miss out on a day's worth of Broncos news, content, coverage, analysis, and more. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports, joined alongside, as always, by Sayre Bedinger. He's the site expert over there at predominantlyorange.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Sayre, the Broncos have a ton of options here that we're going to look at in today's episode of the show. Some scenarios include staying put with the 12th overall pick. Some include trading up. Some include trading back. We'll discuss the ones we lean on and maybe our preference there. But I feel like really kind of kick off the show, the buzz really here for the Broncos is after the trade for Zach Wilson. As you and I have been on the record of saying here on this very show, it adds to the position room, and it shouldn't take away from whether or not they want to add a rookie quarterback to this draft or not. But now it maybe changes the landscape of how they may do that. If they stay put, if they trade up, trade back, there are so many different options here. But let's maybe take a look and explore the Broncos if they stay at the 12th overall pick and they don't trade up or trade down in this year's NFL draft. How are you feeling about this if Denver stays put? How would you prefer things go with them in this scenario right here?
Well, I feel like I've kind of separated myself from this quarterback or bust mentality at 12th overall. And that's just me personally, Cody. I seem to be kind of liking more and more the options that the Broncos have at number 12 overall every day. I mean, it's understandable when general manager George Payton says we're going to be able to get a good player at number 12 overall. You don't really have to talk yourself into many of these guys, right? Let's say Rome Odunze falls to 12. Great pick, great player. Brock Bowers, great pick, great player. Same could be said of, let's say, Dallas Turner, one of the top edge players, falls to 12 overall in this draft. Or Laiatu Latu from UCLA, who some have ranked as the number one edge guy as well. I think any of those players, maybe Byron Murphy from Texas, that defensive lineman that could come in and make a huge impact on one of the weakest areas of this Denver Broncos roster. Cody, to me, I just sit here and I think, man, you start to like more and more the options that could be available to you at 12. It's not like the Broncos are going to have to hope that a bunch of guys go in front of them, because there is going to be, in all likelihood, a run on quarterbacks. There is, in all likelihood, going to be, at some point near, around, or right after the Broncos pick, a run on offensive tackles, and teams have needs there. And so it just opens things up, I think, for the Broncos' top positions of need. If you're to ask me what they are going into this draft, I'm saying, I mean, obviously quarterback is one of them, but then you've got D-line, edge. Maybe you could add in there a pass catcher to feature in your offense with the uncertainty about Courtland Sutton. And I think that just plays into Denver's favor at 12 overall. So the more you sit here and think about it, the more whoever they could go with at 12 outside of quarterback, those non-quarterback options, make a lot of sense.
Well, I think some of the names that you mentioned, they'd certainly be appealing options here for Denver. But I feel like if that's the case for the Broncos to go with one of those players over maybe having a chance at a quarterback, part of me feels like, is Denver comfortable going into the offseason with Zach Wilson, Ben DiNucci, and Jarrett Stidham? Now, Sayre, I don't agree with that. Like, I don't think that should be what Denver does. I think I'm still going quarterback here. If I'm the Broncos at pick 12, number 12 overall, if you're staying there and there's a quarterback available, whether that's Bo Nix or whoever, I'm taking a quarterback if I like that guy. And like I said, I think there's a lot of buzz about, the type of quarterbacks that Sean Payton likes. Bo Nix has gotten a lot of buzz. Peter Schrager appeared on the Pat McAfee show a little bit earlier this week, said he was doing a lot of, phone calls over the course of the last couple of days. And there's a belief now that Penix and Nix could be, there could be 6 quarterbacks taken in round number 1. Those guys could go later round 1 in the later portion of that. So I mean, for me, it's like if those guys are going to be gone at the end part of round number 1 and you don't have a second round pick, don't even play around there. Go get your guy. So for me, I'm going quarterback here, and here's the reason why. Like you look at Zach Wilson, you look at Jarrett Stidham, you look at Ben DiNucci. None of these guys have any contract length past this season, right? So overall, the quarterback room could look entirely different in a year from now. And obviously, they've traded for Zach Wilson. Zach's going to come in. He's going to have the opportunity to compete to start. Is that going to be the best move for the Broncos right now on paper? Probably not, right? Because of his overall body of work. We did say, though, on the episode where it happened, I do feel like the addition of him makes the quarterback room better right now than what it was 2 days ago before the trade had even happened, because Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci, that's not a strong enough quarterback room. Is a quarterback room with DiNucci, Stidham, and Zach Wilson strong? No, not necessarily, but it's better than what it was. That's all we've been trying to say here. I don't like them staying at 12 if it means that, they're going to go get another position besides quarterback. So maybe I think that's maybe where you and I will disagree here. Though I will say, the options that you named aren't bad picks, but I still feel like if Denver feels good about one of these quarterbacks, they simply cannot pass on it in a hope that Zach Wilson's going to turn out to be something that the Jets were hoping he was going to be when they took him second overall in 2021. That's kind of where I'm at here.
And I think it comes down to those, proverbial tiers that the Broncos have, right? And George Payton was asked about, positional, like what weight is given to positional value when it comes to those premium positions that always get talked about: quarterback, edge, interior defensive line, wide receiver, cornerback. That's a huge factor there, because you would be, I guess you have to place quarterback above every other one of those, but those all get lumped into the quote unquote premier positions, right? When you're talking about all those. So it's like the Broncos' best available options at 12 are almost exclusively going to be at the premium positions. Other than, you could argue, Brock Bowers, tight end, yada, yada. I get that. But everyone outside of him plays a premium position in the NFL. And so how do you weight that? Do you go for a guy that you like at quarterback versus a guy that you love at edge or interior defensive line at 12 overall? That's a fascinating piece of this discussion. And really, it's going to be fun to see where the Broncos landed on even just one of these quarterbacks. We know if the Broncos go quarterback in round 1 or round 2, it could be argued that it's the quarterback prospect that Sean Payton has liked the most as a head coach, because he's never taken one with a top 64 selection. So I am fascinated by that, Cody, to find out. Just we've gone through so many scenarios, right? We've gone through every rumor, we've gone through every possible outcome, it feels like, up to this point. And now we've got people saying, hey, there could be 6 quarterbacks taken in round 1, and we still have no clue where the Broncos landed on any one of them at this point. And so to me, it's a matter of, do you love the pass rusher or the receiver or the interior defensive lineman at 12? And do you just like the quarterback? And who wins that battle there? That to me is, as we know, these discussions have happened already or are currently happening. They're not going to be transpiring when they're on the clock at 12 overall. But that to me is the tipping point there. It's, do you love the quarterback or do you like the quarterback? Because if you love the quarterback, I'm with you. You got to take him. If you like him, maybe you try to maneuver the board and have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Well, could the Broncos do that if they were to trade down? What are some ideal scenarios if trading down is the Broncos' best option? That's something that we're going to explore here on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
The best case scenario for the Denver Broncos in the 2024 NFL draft may be to move down, get an additional second round pick, and still find a way to get a high round quarterback. Cody and I are going to discuss that possibility and what that could look like on today's episode of Locked On Broncos. But want to say thank you to every single one of you for rocking with us every single day right here at Locked On Broncos on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, free and available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube, where you got to stay tuned. You got to subscribe because there's going to be tons of content coming up here for the 2024 NFL draft as Cody and I break down every single Broncos pick, all the undrafted free agent signings, and whatever else the team might do. They've already traded for Zach Wilson, traded for Adam Troutman last year. What else are they going to do beyond just drafting guys here this coming weekend? You're going to want to subscribe and stay tuned to find out. But Cody, let's talk about the maybe ideal scenario of trading down in the 2024 NFL draft. Now, just the way that people have been talking about some of the quarterbacks in this class and maybe 4 of them going within the top 5 or 6 picks, it almost makes me wonder, is trading down the most likely scenario of the Broncos landing a quarterback in round 1? Or do you think that if they trade down, that means they just they don't like the quarterbacks enough to take them there? What's an ideal trade down scenario look like in your mind?
Well, I don't necessarily think if Denver trades down, it means they don't love any of the quarterbacks, but maybe they have the belief, okay, if we trade down with a team to get, not only just swap wherever they're picking first in the first round, and obviously that team would get the 12th overall pick, but then you run into the scenario as well as, okay, hey, we want to ask for an early round 2 pick. I mean, I think a lot of it is if the Broncos believe that Bo Nix, let's say Bo Nix is the guy, right? Hypothetically speaking, Bo Nix is the guy that Sean Payton really wants, that he's coveting for at this point in time. And you're like, you know what? We can get him at 23 or 24th overall. We believe that he's going to be there, but we want to swap with the team there. They can take 12, give us an early round 2 pick, and then we can double dip and get 2 really good players in round 1 and round number 2. So they can go get quarterback, and then they can go get maybe another position in round 2 where they currently don't possess a pick. Now, for me, I do think that is probably going to be a scenario that is going to be hard to pass up if the Broncos have the intel that that's something they want to do. And if Bo Nix or Michael Penix is one of those guys there. But like if you're expecting a J.J. McCarthy to be there at 24th, it's probably not going to happen here when we talk about how the draft is going to fall. Now, I think you can maybe look in terms of some other realms here as can you do that? Like, is it quarterback or like what other position can you add to the mix? I think you asked a very good question of whether or not you can trade down and still get maybe a Jared Verse or Letu Latu, Byron Murphy type guy, and even still come away with a quarterback, whether that's Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., or maybe even a Spencer Rattler, whose value could suddenly shockwave and jump up. I mean, we know Denver's interested in 7 to 8 quarterbacks. How much of that is smokescreen? We don't know. But I want to ask you your thoughts on that. Like, what is the best path, in your opinion, here for Denver if they are entertaining a trade down? Because, like, for me, I believe you still get the quarterback in round 1 and then try to get another position in round 2 versus, getting another position in round 1 and then trying to get a quarterback in round 2. I think that's a little bit of a riskier path for George Payton and for Sean Payton to take.
It is a risky path. I mean, and these aren't 1-for-1 comparison type of situations, but remember back in 2010 when the Broncos, they had identified Tim Tebow as their top guy at the quarterback position, and laugh at all you want at that. I mean, we're just talking strategy here, right? They went out and took Demaryius Thomas with their top pick in that class, and then they traded a bunch of picks, I think with the Baltimore Ravens, to get back into the first round to select Tebow, knowing that he would be there at a certain point late in the first, and you're really just trying to maximize value at that point. And you're also, I think when you do this type of tactic here, Cody, I think you take a little bit of pressure off the quarterback himself. I think you take a little pressure off yourself as the head coach and lead decision maker. If you're Sean Payton and you say, all right, we're going to trade down, let's say to 22 with the Philadelphia Eagles. They've got an extra second round pick. We'll get 22 and 53 and maybe a little something to sweeten the pot there from Philadelphia and move down to 22. And Jared Verse just happens to be sitting there at 22. And you're like, wow, we got Jared as a top 15 or 16 guy on our board. We've got to have him. But now all of a sudden you've got these other extra picks to be able to work with. You take Jared Verse at 22, and then you call up Arizona at 27 or Detroit at 29, and you say, all right, hey, we'll give you our second and a future third and a fourth for 29, whatever it may be. And then you take Bo Nix there. that to me is bordering on the ideal scenario for Denver to be able to say, all right, we did get another elite or a top flight prospect at a position that we feel is a premium position, but we also went and got a quarterback that we believe can start for us. We got the 5th-year option on this guy, but we didn't have to necessarily sacrifice a second round pick, or we didn't have to not necessarily sacrifice an additional starter in order to get him. That to me is why I said earlier, maybe trading down is the clearest path to a quarterback in this draft for Denver when it comes to guys like Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr.
Well, in that situation as well, I think we also have to factor in it just beyond the draft here. I think going into next offseason, like Denver is going to have a lot of salary cap space. Now, of course, everyone's going to be like, well, they're still paying Russell Wilson $33 million next year. That doesn't matter. No, dead and gone. Like, doesn't matter anymore because they're going to have operating room. And look, you come to terms on an extension with Patrick Surtain or Quinn Miners during the season. It gives you even more flexibility going into next year's offseason period. You don't necessarily have to worry about a potential franchise tag on a guy and then missing out on him. For me, I think that Denver is in a very, very good position here to build this roster around who they get in this year's NFL draft, which ideally that should be the premise of how George Paton and Sean Payton operate. While still trying to keep them at the forefront, we want to be as competitive as possible here in 2024. There's no guarantee of that, but obviously that's the goal in mind. They're going to come out there and they're going to try to play really well and try to win games. Is it going to happen this year? We don't know. Like, that's the nature of the NFL business. It's wildly unpredictable, but this is the operating process in which Sean and George are going into with the mindset like, hey, like, we are still planning on competing. We're still planning to win games. We plan to win more than 8 games next season. It may be hard for the fan base and for a lot of people to see right now, but they're going to make moves that make that a little bit more likely in their opinion. And then the rest is going to have to be about performance and obviously how they do calling plays, as a coaching staff, and whether or not, they can keep guys healthy. How do they structure the offense and the defense? How can they get better performances from guys who need to step up this year that didn't have a great year in 2023? Like, there are so many different factors that we have to go into this, but ultimately the foundation that Broncos country needs to keep in mind is that this draft right here, in my opinion, I have a strong feeling about it, is going to be the draft where Sean Payton says, this is our foundation going forward. And what we do from this point on is to build around who we've got in this year's draft, because he doesn't really have a quarterback he's tied to in this situation as well that's currently on Denver's roster. And I think that gives them a lot of flexibility. So, hey, if you can do that trade down scenario that you're alluding to here, I think it puts the Broncos in a better spot, to be honest with you.
It does, and it gives you multiple guys to build around. This scenario specifically would give you multiple guys to build around on either side of the ball. A true presence off the edge, which right now, you and I have talked about that. It's like, do the Broncos have a bunch of Robins off the edge or not? We'll see what they think really when this NFL draft is over. But at those two positions, edge and quarterback, if you were able to get guys that you have first round grades on or that you believe can be difference makers at those two positions in particular, I mean, those are the two maybe arguably most important positions when you're talking about you got to have a quarterback that can win you games. So you got to be able to get after the quarterback. And a guy like Jared Verse or Leatu Latu can make everybody better. And a quarterback that distributes the ball, that plays the point guard position for Sean Payton's offense. I mean, that's it. And that's what this team needs. And so we're going to find out a lot. But to me, obviously, you always want to trade down. You always want to stockpile picks. But to me, it's not just about having the darts to throw, right? It's about making sure that you can get guys that you target at the most important positions to be able to do exactly what you said, to build around somebody going forward.
Well, and how might that pan out, Broncos country, if Denver's looking to trade up? Would that be the wise move for them at this point in time if it means mortgaging future assets after the events of this week of obviously trading for Zach Wilson? We'll debate that much more here on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at Monopoly Go. I've been told that I'm a competitive person, and to be honest with you, I'm very competitive. Game night is very, very competitive in my household, and I do have a competitive side. We all do, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode of Locked On Broncos, we just wanted to say thank you once again to everybody on Broncos Country for making the show exactly what it is. Whether you watch on YouTube, where we just hit over 12,000 subscribers, we just want to say thank you, Broncos Country, for that. Or if you listen to us wherever you get your podcast, you make the show exactly what it is. And we're so excited about this week, the NFL draft. You're going to get complete reaction from Sayre and myself. I'll be at the Broncos team facility covering the draft, and we'll hopefully be able to hop on after the pick is made to give you the reaction that you want here in Broncos Country. But there is another scenario that we are talking about here as we look forward to the Broncos options in the 2024 NFL draft. We talked about staying put at 12. We talked about trading down and looking at the pros and cons of that. But now let's bring trading up back into the discussion here for the Broncos. Now, before they went and they traded for Zach Wilson, I think a lot of people are saying, hey, trading up for a quarterback now might not be on the table for the Broncos. I disagree. I still think it's very much on the table here. But the question is, trading up, how far, and what are you going to have to give up to be able to do that? To me, that is a huge question mark here, because Sean Payton and them, look, well, you don't want to mortgage, a lot of picks of your future, especially if you're planning to build your team through the NFL draft. But we did hear from George and Sean last week. They did say, hey, if there's a player that you really love and you feel like this player will change the landscape of your franchise, you do whatever it takes to go and get him. There's a scenario here where Denver could do that. In your opinion, if Denver were to trade up, what is not the best scenario here for the Broncos if that is something that they wanted to do here, moving up from the 12th overall pick?
Well, I think what's not ideal is giving up multiple future first-round picks in addition to the 12th overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. A lot of times people kind of misinterpret, well, you're giving up 3 first-round picks just to get this guy. It's like, no, you're actually giving up only 2. You're swapping first-round picks in this year's draft and giving up 2 future ones. But even that right there is something that, can the Broncos afford it, right? Because they missed out on first-round guys in 2022, missed out on first-round guys in 2023. Then you would be talking about missing out on first-round guys in 2025 and 26. So how long can you realistically go without a first-round pick if you don't have those foundational pieces on the roster? Because look, the Los Angeles Rams, they did it right, but no, they got impact from those picks. They got Jalen Ramsey and they got other players that they traded for and drafted later. So it wasn't just about giving up the picks and saying that, F them picks, like we don't care about having the picks. Well, they actually got good players for those picks. And so it wasn't a matter of just not having, screw the picks. It was, we drafted well in the mid rounds. We signed quality free agents. We traded those picks for quality veteran talent and we're able to build a contender. Are the Broncos in the same boat right now? No, they're not. They don't have Aaron Donald. They don't have Cooper Kupp. They don't have Matthew Stafford. They don't have any of that. They need these foundational pieces. So how far up can you realistically trade? I know Sean Payton said it is realistic to trade up, and it is. I mean, the Broncos could trade those future first-round picks, and they could throw a player like Courtland Sutton in the deal, and they could realistically move up. But the realism of that is not, can you make the trade? It's, can you build a competent roster around that pick after you've made it?
I'm still going to be one of the people on the board that says, like, for example, if Denver were to try to include Patrick Surtain in a trade, right? Look, I think until the draft passes and that doesn't happen, it's something that we have to kind of sit here like, are they going to do that? I don't think that would be worth it, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, he does nothing for you. What does that mean? Like, what do you mean he does nothing for you? Like, all of a sudden, let's say the Broncos get their quarterback of the future, right? But let's say they get rid of Patrick Surtain. And all of a sudden, the defense and the secondary, they're giving up points. They're giving up, big yards, chunk yards, like we saw toward the end of last season. It's not going to matter if you get your quarterback if your defense is giving up points at the rate in which they were last year. Heck, to be honest with you, Denver's 1-5 start last year, Sayre, I think was a great example of, hey, you need guys all around the board to be able to put up points. It didn't matter. Like, Denver's offense, and look, as much as people want to hate on Russell Wilson, the Broncos offense and Russ early on in the season were playing pretty good. They were a big reason they were in some of those games initially. And all of a sudden, the defense are giving up 40 points per game. And all of a sudden, it's like, it don't matter if you have your quarterback or not. If your defense is giving up that much points, it doesn't matter what you do if you have the quarterback. It doesn't matter if you have Patrick Mahomes in that situation. Like, it's going to end in the same result, a loss. And you have to have quality guys on the secondary. You have to have quality corners in today's NFL. Denver, luckily, right now, has an undrafted rookie free agent stud at the nickel position. They have a stud in Patrick Surtain. They need somebody opposite of Surtain because, as we all saw, when the Broncos needed to make the playoffs, when they needed to win games in that late stretch, what happened? Fabian Moreau got absolutely torched, cooked, burnt, whatever you want to call it, and it led to the Broncos losing some games as well. So I don't think we can look back at last year and say, you know what, like, we could trade Patrick Surtain away and be comfortable with it because if we get our quarterback, it doesn't matter who's playing cornerback because at this point, you're going to be able to put up more points on the offensive side of the ball, which is not guaranteed. You need a quarterback. You need a cornerback. They're highly coveted, valuable positions, and it's clear that George Payton also feels the same. Like, they've talked about the importance of QB, but they've also highlighted the importance of edge rusher and corner in today's game. I think those are the top three positions that the team views as most valuable to the success or failure of the organization. I think trading away Patrick Surtain would be a terrible, terrible mistake, and I don't agree with that. Now, ideally, if you are going to trade up, I'm not a big believer of Denver right now trading up from 12 to 4 at this point, right? Because that would involve getting rid of all the capital, in future years. I do think that could it be more likely, some of the mock drafts that we've done, like JJ McCarthy has somehow, fallen to the Broncos pick in our mock draft database simulation that we did. Peter Schrager said that he thinks that J.J. McCarthy will be the fourth quarterback taken in this year's NFL draft. That depends. Is he going to be, pick number 4? Is he going to be pick number 5? Or, for example, are you going to see a run with Caleb Williams, what we anticipate to be Drake May to the Commanders, Jaden Daniels to the Patriots at 3? Where's JJ going? Is he going to Minnesota? Like, that's where I think we have to have the conversation here as it pertains to Denver. If they have to move up that far and get rid of future capital that's going to allow them to build this team around the personnel they're going to have now, I'm not necessarily a big fan of it as I was prior to maybe the draft buildup this week.
I think Joel Klatt, who calls college games for Fox, Cody, he made a great point on his mock draft this year. He said that at 5 overall, Jim Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy's head coach in college, obviously, is going to essentially be able to decide the guy's fate as an NFL quarterback. He's going to be able to sell off that pick to another team and say, hey, I can choose who I'm trading this selection to. And he argued that the best situation for a rookie quarterback coming in is the Minnesota Vikings, where they've got all those weapons. They've got Kevin O'Connell, who could develop. And I tend to agree with that. And they've got more to offer than the Broncos do right now in terms of draft capital. So it's not just a matter of realism. It's a matter of it. If Jim Harbaugh is holding the cards, is he going to trade that pick to a division rival? I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be willing to do that. Maybe he would if he says, you know what, I think Sean Payton is the best guy to develop my guy, JJ McCarthy, and I want to see him succeed. I don't care if I have to play him twice a year. Maybe Jim would do something like that. We've seen crazier things. NFC North teams have been trading picks with each other over the last couple of years. So you never know, but I just don't know, Cody. I don't know if the Chargers certainly would charge the Broncos a little bit extra as an in-division trade. It'd be like, you know what, you're going to have to give us a little something more.
Who would do that, too?
I don't think they would. And especially involving the quarterback position, I mean, it would be unprecedented. So to talk about getting up that high, the more realistic scenario is maybe JJ falls to the 8th pick and Sean Payton, who has ties to Terry Fontenot, who worked for the New Orleans Saints even longer than Sean did. Those two guys know each other well, and they call each other up and say, hey, we'll give you 12 for pick number 8, and we'll throw in whatever else. I mean, within reason, whatever else you want. Do you want our 3rd round pick this year? Do you want our 3rd round pick next year? We'll trade up with you guys and get a more reasonable deal done, as opposed to sacrificing future 1st round picks. That relationship equity, Cody, I think is something that's worth paying attention to, because Dallas could still get Dallas Turner or Leatu Latu or Byron Murphy at 12, and then the Broncos could get JJ at 8. So that's the scenario, that trading up, that I would say that's the one deal that I could see getting done and would be within the realm of realism and palatable for the Denver Broncos.
Well, put it in reverse, Terry. We'll see what the Broncos decide to do here. The NFL draft will happen on Thursday. You get complete coverage here as well. But for all you everyday listeners out there, Locked On Broncos, here's what you can expect on tomorrow's brand new episode of the show. Wednesday around the NFL is a very, very big day right before the NFL draft because all of the draft experts and the insiders put together their final mock draft with the information that they've collected. We'll take a look at some of the best ones, including Peter Schrager, Daniel Jeremiah, and others, and you'll get that on tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.